Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Dom from Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals. We're up in New Hampshire today shooting some pro mountain bikers, and I'm going to be testing out the Sony FX9. Primarily, I want to be looking at the dual base ISOs, the autofocus, and most importantly, the auto ND function on this camera. So let's get shooting. So body-wise, the FX9 is actually really similar to the FS7 externally. All your button layouts on this side you're gonna find are pretty much the same as the FS7. A couple new things, but other than that, pretty much exactly the same. Just like we saw in the FS7, the FS9 has this alpha mount system, which is an E-mount, but it kind of has this locking ring here that makes it more like a PL mount system. So again, just like in the FS7, on this side of the camera, we have two XLRs right here, two SDIs, an HDMI down here, a timecode, and a gen lock. One thing I did notice about the FX9 is that the battery well is super deep, much deeper than the FS7, and it makes this super bulky BPU 90 look like just a regular battery on this thing.
Yeah, go up.
So there aren't a whole lot of differences externally from the FS7, but let's talk about some changes that Sony made with the FX9 internally. Similar to the FS7, you can change your internal NDs on the FX9 with the ND presets or a variable ND dial, but the big thing that Sony added with this camera is a program auto ND. This is going to adjust my level of ND automatically, so I'm pretty much going to leave all my shooting settings the same and let the auto ND do all the work, which is going to be huge on a day like this because we're in a mainly shaded area, but there are a lot of patches of direct sunlight that are coming right through the trees. For when I hit one of those direct sunlight areas, it's just gonna stop right down. It's one less thing I'm gonna have to think about on this shoot. So another notable thing about the auto ND function in this camera is now that I have an automatic setting, I can set my exposure control to +1, so the camera is always going to know to keep things a little bit overexposed, which is great because I'm shooting in the Cine EI mode. So another really cool thing about this camera that Sony added that makes it really versatile is the dual base ISOs, where your low base is going to be at 800 and we have a high base ISO of 4000, which is going to be really nice for dark scenarios or that auto ND function that I told you about earlier. So we already know that Sony borrowed a lot of the autofocus technology in their mirrorless line to put in the FX9, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if they borrowed some of those high ISO features to put in this camera because the high gain image actually looks really nice. So one thing that I did that I think is really going to help on the shoot, and something I'll probably do for every single shoot I bring this on, is set an assignable button to toggle between those two base ISOs, which is something I think Sony wants you to do because actually in the assignable buttons menu, dual base ISOs is the very top option. The alternate is going and doing it in the menus, and it's kind of buried in there. So right out of the gate when this camera was released, Sony was really boasting its autofocus tracking, and after testing it for a while, I happen to agree. After putting this through some rigorous autofocus testing, it was really sharp and responsive with a couple of quirks here and there, but no autofocus system is perfect as of yet. My main subject here are professional mountain bikers who are going to be whizzing by, and there are going to be a lot of objects passing through the foreground, so this should be a really good test of the autofocus in this camera. So in most of the Sony mirrorless cameras, the autofocus was pretty good, but if you dialed it up to be too fast or too responsive, you'd probably notice that the autofocus was jumping or searching for things that you didn't really want it to search for. So for this shoot, I'm gonna dial in the autofocus settings to be the fastest and most responsive possible, and if it's giving me problems, I'm gonna adjust it from there. But I have a feeling the FX9 is going to handle this really well. With that being said, obviously it's not perfect. Every autofocus system is gonna have its quirks, but for the most part, the autofocus in the FX9 performs very well, pretty much just how you would want it to. The face tracking autofocus in this camera is perhaps the most sophisticated face tracking I have ever seen. Most of these riders are gonna have full face helmets on, so the face tracking autofocus isn't going to really work there, but I'll try to get some shots of the crew so you can see what I'm talking about.
One wheel, but like they ripped right through there.
It's so fast.
So like there's no shot movie moves it's gonna work, but again that's where that drone.
It's gonna be money.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna get more real estate out of those. One side like on it, and down.
It's locked in and you get like the angle off.
So for a true documentary style or ENG type camera rig, you're gonna want a lens that's fully compatible with the internal functions of the camera, mainly being the zoom rockers on the side handle and the top handle. So right now, Sony only makes 2 lenses that are compatible with these functions, and those are the PZ-GOSS servo lenses, which are both f4, and they come in 18-110 and 24-135 focal lengths.
Is that 96?
Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up for me today. Those guys are still up there breaking some stuff down, and I just wanted to tail off this video by giving a shout out to MUTT Society, who put on an absolutely epic shoot today, which was A, super fun, and B, ended up being the perfect test for the FX9 in like a docu-style shooting scenario. So if you have any questions about the FX9 or the lenses that I used, make sure you drop a comment in the comment section. And if you liked this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more weekly content, and we'll see you in the next one.